I want to jump in because what you're saying, I actually saw a quote from Kissinger where he said during the LA riots that had they ushered in the UN as the alternative to the police, America would have risen up and fought them back. But the goal, Kissinger said, was to be begging for the American people begging for the UN to come in and save us.
Yes, that's precisely
right now, it seems like what they're trying to set up, from what you're saying and the truth, is that we will cede our sovereignty and our safety to the UN, which is their goal. And, you know, what you're saying right now is basically what Kissinger said during the LA riots was right now, if you know, it was ceded to the UN peacekeepers, America would rise up. But I think right now the goal is to have America beg for the UN to come in.
Yes, I don't think they'll beg for the UN. They'll just beg for some kind of martial law. But I certainly agree that ultimately the UN will be the chosen vehicle, because when it starts getting ugly and American boys in uniform are asked to start killing American citizens, most of them are not going to want to do it. So that's where you got to bring in people from other countries who have no such, feeling of affection for their own fellow countrymen. But my point is, and I'll try and make this short now, is that I believe that this has always, for the last few decades, has been the end game that they want is martial law. So it seems that, if Mr. Biden was elected, there would be no riots. I can't imagine any conservatives out there rioting against Biden, no matter how much they hated him. The only way they're going to get martial law is to have a landslide for Mr. Trump, and then they'll say it was a stolen election. They've already told us what the scenario is, because that is the plan. They want Mr. Trump in the office so they can have the riot, so they can have the end plan, and so to make all these good Americans who own firearms beg for martial law. And that's the way they plan to close it down without having to deal with the firearms.
I have a question. Why is it that to Mr. Griffin, why are other countries much worse? Like in Canada, I have reports that the UN is already marching in. And also just like to say that in the global reset, Klaus says from here on out, it will no longer be before Christ and after Christ. It will be before Corona and after Corona.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why some countries would be more advanced in this master plan than others, unless it's the same reason that some states in the United States are more advanced than others. It probably depends on the development of this collectivist cabal in each country. Not every country has such great concentration of what really are undercover agents that have been underground, sort of in sleeper cells, posing as Democrats or Republicans or some other political party in some other country. They're perfectly capable of taking on any label that whatever they think people will vote for. But when underneath, they're probably, they have no affinity to any particular political party. They just want to come to power, so that when they're given the signal, then they will do exactly what they're doing now. And that's the only reason they were in the game to begin with, is to bring about this great reset to feudalism. So I guess some countries moved faster in that direction, just like some states, like where I come from in California. It's incredible how much the state government is totally infested with people like this. And I imagine other countries have a more or less gauge on that as well.
Well, I just want to say that, I'm just one dude with a podcast, but if UN troops set foot on U.S. soil, sounds like a great day to die, in my humble opinion. And there's a reason and if I'm the only one, then so be it, dude. Go down in a blaze of glory, but not on my watch. And, maybe I'm just a fodder that gets fed to the machine, and it is what it is, but I ain't going to have that. And I'd rather go out. But,
well, there are a lot of people like you with that attitude, but that doesn't mean that that's, the ideal way to stop this juggernaut, because they have weapons that are beyond the imagination of most of us. I have had inkling to some of these these electronic weapons, laser beam weapons, and so forth. They can deal with very large crowds from one truck with a big antenna. They can just basically cook everybody from the inside out. And we have no weapons that can challenge that. So if we're going to solve this problem, it's not with weapons. It's got to be with the weapon of the mind. We have to turn these people around. I remember back in the day in the 60s and the 70s when I was ramping up for all of this, there was a lot of a quotation going on from different communists. Khrushchev was one of them that everybody quoted. He said, "We will bury you." He was talking to the United States. And along with that quote, there was something to the effect that while you are talking about fighting communism, we are capturing your children. And of course, that's exactly what was happening at the universities and then later in the high schools as well. They captured our children, and now our children are the mayors and the governors and the senators and the congressmen. They captured them, but not as communists. They captured them as collectivists. They captured them in the mind of all the principles of communism without giving it that name. And so now I'm kind of pleased with the idea that we're at a point where we might be able to say back to these people, okay, you've got it right now, but we're getting your children. Their children, the young kids, are coming over to our side in droves. They're realizing what the future is holding out for them. And some of these kids come from families that are in the elite, and they're breaking rank with their own families. I know a couple of them. And they're realizing that, oh my gosh, everything is at stake. And I think it's possible. It's going to be really interesting to see if this whole thing doesn't recycle around to the point where that perhaps in the next generation, or maybe sooner than that, a lot of the kids of these super elites are going to wind up coming over, so to speak, to the light side. I'd like to see that happen.
I just wanted to say what you're saying about sorry, nobody.
Attorney Hancock.
I wanted to say that
I'm sorry.
there's something about the remote schooling, like having kids learn from computers and all of that. That is what you're saying. Like, we can't allow big tech to educate our children. And that's kind of part of what's going on with this Corona thing. And I found a lot of evidence that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation and all these people are the ones that are doing the online curriculum. And what you're saying about the children is really important because they're going after our kids without us really seeing it. So what you're saying about educating the children is right now with the COVID, they've had the opportunity to actually put 90% of children in this world, K through 12 right now, are learning online. But who's controlling the online learning? It's not the parents or the educators, it's big tech. So, we're kind of like, what do you think about that? I mean, they've kind of monopolized education for our kids, and nobody really has a say. So, I agree.
Well, I think what's happening is that it hasn't changed in principle because most of the schools, not all, but certainly most of the schools in the larger metropolitan areas, to be sure, have been indoctrinating our kids for a long, long time. So now it's switched over to the electronic media and it's coming right into the homes. But in principle, it hasn't changed. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity to recognize the value of homeschooling. Homeschooling, by the way, is exploding right now. Now, we know that the establishment is going to come against homeschooling even harder now for that very reason, because they don't want that to happen. But nevertheless, you cannot stop a parent from teaching their kids at home. You just can't stop it. Well, I shouldn't say you can't. You can come to the door and knock it down, drag the people out and put them in trucks. But other than that, if parents really want to take control of their kids' education, this is a wonderful opportunity and a good excuse to do it.
Well, Hitler had a quote, and it was, "He alone who owns a youth gains a future." And actually, Kingsley Edwards, who's down here right now, got kicked off of Facebook for posting that 8 years ago, and they went back 4 days ago and not kicked off Facebook, but they banned him from posting for 24 hours for that quote from 8 years ago, just a couple days ago. And I also want to let people know, I couldn't join the one last time because I actually drove across country to go to the Red Pill Expo that Mr. Griffin was hosted. There was over 600 people there, a bunch of great speakers, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Robert Kiyosaki, Del Bigtree, Mickey Wills, who was the guy who made the pandemic documentary, Alex Newman, George Gannon, just a ton of others. And I've gone to a lot of conferences, and this one I actually listened to probably most of the speakers who were up there, and a lot of times I don't because I feel like I know a lot of it. But this time I actually got a lot out of that conference. He did it on short notice, and the fact that you had, I mean, would you say there's probably about 600 people there, sir, who were at the conference, and it was highly attended, and it was a great time. So people can probably still get that at redpillexpo.org, can they?
Yes, and we're in the process now. In fact, you could still sign up for a replay. It's going to go through at least the end of November. We'll probably open it up through December too, because we had some technical delays and problems. So you can see the whole thing by signing up for the replay. And by the way, you don't even have to do that, because when all of these individual programs are edited and all cleaned up so that all the non-important information is removed from them, all the delays and so forth, they're going into the Red Pill University archives. And at that point, they're open to the world, to the public at no charge. I mean, if you just want to wait a couple of months, it'll all be available. That's our policy. We ask for donations to help us get this great wealth of information together into the archives. But then after it's there, it's free to the world. We don't want anybody to have to say, well, I can't see these good programs because I can't afford it. Or a lot of people don't want to spend the money till they know what they're getting. So anyway, we put everything up free. So I guess what I'm trying to say in the simple version is that, yes, the whole Red Pill Expo probably by December somewhere is going to be on the Red Pill University website, and anybody can go and see every bit of it. If you
Mr.
want to
Griffin,
have
could
it
I ask
beforehand,
you,
you can see it now.
Could I ask you just quickly about the manufacturer consent of technocracy? Because obviously a lot of people are talking about the forced vaccinations, and a lot of people believe that we will be seeing forced vaccinations soon. I would disagree in the sense that it would probably be voluntary, but via like social contracts or not social contract, social credit. So like Chinese style social credit. If you don't get the vaccine, you won't be able to get a bank account. You can't go to public places. You can't travel on planes. Basically, they're going to eradicate travel, make travel just for the most wealthy once again, and make it impossible for people to get around without being vaccinated. And it'll be connected to kind of like a technocratic cashless system. You've been talking about this for many years. And of course, you've done work with people like Patrick Wood, who wrote books on technocracy years and years ago. I wanted to ask about your thoughts on navigating a technocratic system based on social credit, where they're going to be telling you, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't do anything. You're basically going to be forced into your home and unable to actually feed your family.
Well, that's kind of like standing in front of a brick wall, isn't it? I mean, where do you go from there if in fact they are able to cut off your complete social and economic interaction in the world, and they do that through money? That's why the cashless society and the cryptocurrencies are so important to these people. They want to have us not having cash in our pockets or under our pillows or in the mattress or anything like that. They want us to be able to or not be able to acquire anything unless it's done through an electronic transfer system, and it goes through a big building where they've got switches that they can turn on and off for all of us. So that's the ultimate control. How you survive without having access to any kinds of commercial or social interaction that costs money is the question. Some people say, well, they're going to have to build local communities and that kind of thing. It might be possible, but I have a feeling that eventually these people are not going to allow that to happen either. They don't want any kind of private property to exist, and you couldn't have a community without private property, at least belonging to the community, but not to the government. So I think that realistically, and I hate to say this, but I think realistically the only hope we really have to prevent this kind of absolute slavery is to stop it from happening. We've got to prevent this from coming to be. We can't just wait and see how we're going to deal with it. We've got to stop it. And that's where we have to face our fears again and decide, okay, are we going to just sit here and wait and see what happens? Or are we going to be proactive and figure out that we have to take the counterattack and try and dismantle this thing?
Does that involve illegal means?
It probably does, because I think the definition of legal, strictly speaking, is there a law? relating to it. Well, these people are passing laws by the minute. They'll pass any law they wish. So practically everything we want to do will be declared to be illegal. So I guess the answer is yes.